There is no magic supplement. There is no magic treatment. There are treatments that are cool, and those might be nice to layer on top once, but we got to do a system of systems because we're a system of systems, right? So, and then the body just takes care of it. Like literally the body does the healing. The first thing we got to do is just do a check, just do a self inventory. What am I eating? How am I feeling? How am I sleeping? Just get objective so we know where we're at.
That was Dr. Melanie Icard, and you've landed on the Me and My Health Up podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Hartcher, your Wellcierge. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today, Dr. Mel is going to do that for you. Dr. Mel is a naturopathic doctor based in the US, and we're going to be discussing heart health and what you can do to lower your calcium scores, to lower your blood pressure, and to help with the management of type 2 diabetes. So we're talking metabolic health, heart health, and we're addressing it holistically. So without much further ado, I'd love to welcome you into the discussion I'm having with Dr. Mel. Welcome on the Me and My Health Up podcast. How are you, Dr. Mel?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I really look forward to this holistic discussion around heart health. But before we get into that, I'd really love to hear your backstory as to how you've arrived at what you're doing today.
Yeah, yeah, because it's really cool now because now people are kind of have heard about holistic medicine or trying to integrate it into their life. And I think I've been doing this professionally for about maybe 12 years now. And there was so much front end education we had to do every day, right? So it wasn't a normal career path. And I know you're in Australia, I believe, right? So I'm an American girl,
Yeah.
but I can imagine it's too different. I grew up pretty typical, 3 meals a day, and if we got lucky, mom took us to McDonald's or, like this kind of a thing. And didn't know anything about being healthy because I'm an 80s baby and there wasn't a lot of health nuts in the neighborhood. And what happened was it was a couple steps that were really personal is that my mother actually got really sick with cancer, with breast cancer at a young age. So she ended up passing away at 33 years old, right? And I'm the only girl and I'm the second oldest, and she actually had a baby. So I actually didn't go to school because if you've ever had cancer or a friend with cancer, family member, no one just dies of cancer. It's a whole process, right? So I went through that process with her and took care of her and my baby brother and then lost her, right? And I'm like, man, as a kid, I don't know anything, but I'm like, man, all these treatments are just making her sicker. Right. And she passed away. And then what happened is we're from Alaska, me and my brothers, and our dad happened to live in Mexico. So we got shipped from Alaska to Mexico. So there's a whole new, I mean, everything, right? Language, like everything. And dad was always a health nut. And he was like the only one, like everyone, no one was being healthy. Everyone was like pounding beer and Pizza Hut, right? And so we didn't get it because we thought he was weird because he wasn't like everybody else. Like he would even get mad at us for drinking milk. And I don't know how it was in Australia, but in the 80s and 90s in America, like everyone had milk at dinner. It was normal, like totally normal, right? And he would get upset about NutraSweet and MSG. And we just thought, man, he's a nut. He loves to rant and rave. And the thing that really got us is that he would do these juice cleanses and he wouldn't eat food for 10 days. And we're like, Dad, you're not going to eat for 10 days. That's so weird, right? So we just went on about our life and made fun of our dad. And we're just standard American kids. And then you fast forward, I have a son. He's 22. And so when I got pregnant with him, that's when it finally sunk in, right? I'm like, oh, maybe dad's onto something here. Like maybe what you put into your body and what's in your environment is really, really important. And I don't want my child to lose their mother because it was kind of hard for me being a kid that didn't have a mom, because in my case, I had a sweet mom and then I didn't have anyone that had my back and that was looking out for me. I just kind of, you have to be like a cat, and like land on your feet kind of a thing. So then I went to my father and I said, I know I was a brat. I made fun of you. I get it, but I really need you to teach me how to be healthy now. So that's when I started my holistic health life journey, right? So now he's 22. So that was 23 years ago. And I'll tell you what, I learn stuff every day. And even I relearn stuff like blasts from the past come back, right? Like now I'm back into the copper again and the bee pollen, they cycle back in. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a great treatment. And that's how I got into it initially. And of course, I thought I was going to treat cancer. I went in there. I made best friends with the cancer doctor. I got on that cancer shift, and I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And maybe things have changed now, right? Because this was a long time ago. But they were doing all the best treatments, vitamin C IVs, blah blah blah, supplements, detox, whatever. The people were miserable. They literally told me, I'm like a brand new medical student, I'm gonna die. I was like, okay, like something's wrong here. Because in my pre med, I had learned about mind body medicine, and I'm like, man, they're really missing the boat here with this whole situation. So I jumped ship. I'm like, I'm not doing cancer. I'm jumping ship. And I thought that I wanted to do other things. I tried home births because that seemed exciting, but that's for people that don't like to sleep as much as I do, right? Then I'm like, oh, this isn't for me. I like to get my 8 hours of sleep in. And then I found out about regenerative medicine, which is kind of where I've landed is holistic regenerative medicine because it works. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you know, but everyone at medical school was talking about prolotherapy. I'm like, what's the big deal about prolotherapy? So I go to this regenerative medicine conference in Las Vegas. And this is a funny story. The guy, I didn't know where to go because they did these breakout sessions, like hands-on. And this lady that ended up being one of my mentors goes, come with me, Mel. We're going to go over here. This guy's cool. So I'm like, all right. And then he goes, who has a C-section scar? I love treating C-section scars. Me, you know? Okay, good news, bad news, right? And then I guess what happens? You have to take your pants off in front of all these people you don't know, right? Because now we're going to check out my C-section scar. And you're like, and the guy's telling me scars hold energy and they hold memories. So when I'm going to inject your scar and you might get memories and you might cry. And I'm like, whatever, like, wrap it up, buddy. And then he goes, and this scar never healed. It was big and pink on the sides, on the ends. He's like, this scar is over 10 years old, Mel. It should have healed better by now. And he told me that I had adhesions from, C-section scar is going to be in the lower abdomen, up here at the bottom of my rib cage near the sternum, that I had adhesions, and I was just stressed out. I'm like, just do this and wrap it up. I don't want to be here in my underwear. So he starts injecting the scar, and I start crying, and I get a flashback because when I had my son with the C-section, that was the first time I ever was in the hospital. And of course I got the brand new nurse I was like, wait, is this blood supposed to be squirting out of my arm? Like, what's going on here? And so it was really weird and scary. And I had blocked it all out until he injected the scar. And here's the next thing. I wake up in the morning. It's not big and pink on the sides anymore. It's literally one little white line. And I had inflammation all the way up to my sternum. And that's when I went, okay, this is real. I need to find all the mentors and workshops I can and figure this out because we can really help people with this regenerative medicine. And that's kind of what lit the fire for me.
Wow, what a story. I just interested as to what he injected your scar with. What was the magic
That's the
potion?
crazy thing. It was almost nothing, right? It was like protein, B vitamins, sugar water, dextrose. Crazy. Like sometimes it's so simple. And
And
I
so it
guess,
was just essentially
yeah, go ahead.
putting nutrients into the scar.
And breaking it up, like too, right? Maybe going this way, going that way, breaking up
Right.
that scar
Okay.
tissue. And it kind of goes
Yeah.
into that. I've been leaning more into this idea of just the human body as like a battery. And so maybe it just opened up, something where there was an energy block.
Yeah, wow, wow. I just recently been getting my children treated holistically in relation to dental care, and one of the osteopath. So they have an osteopath and dentist together, and the osteopath was actually the chiropractor. The chiropractor recognized a scar on my daughter's head, and then they thought, oh, wow, it's the same sort of situation, very pink, very clear that it was a scar. And what they were saying is that it was affecting the neurological mapping of her brain, having that raised scar tissue. And it was essentially like the body sending messages to there and not getting any feedback. It was sort of like a blockage, like you just shared it, like a energy blockage. And so what they actually did was work on that scar, and it's made a profound difference on her health holistically, was to really work on the scar.
It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that story, like in terms of it, like you had a real healthy dad that, you thought at the time, he was doing, he's out there doing all the stuff
Yeah, we
that
thought he was
wasn't
a weirdo.
mainstream. Yeah, yeah. And then you had that about turn moment when you're thinking, now I'm in a position, I'm raising a kid. I want to do everything I can to raise a kid so it's healthy. And then you went back to dad and said, what do I do? How do I be healthy? So it's really nice story there. In terms of your connection with heart health, where does the heart health come into it? I'm interested
Yeah.
as to how,
That was
yeah,
just fate, I think. So it was a couple things like usual. It was the clients, because then I went into practicing, regenerative medicine and didn't specialize in one thing because I had so many interests, right? And one of the clients, it was this protocol was birthed for a specific client that he was probably my worst client. He would come in once a year on a health kick, never listened to me about anything. But this time he was really serious because they had told him he needed to put some stents in his heart. And lucky for us, he kind of has a strong personality because he said, let's hold off there. Where most people that is scary, right? And they might rush into the operating room. He said, I don't think so. Give me 2 months. And then he came to see me and he said, Mel, I don't want to do this. I know I never listened to you, but I've got 2 months. What do you got for me? And I said, okay. And I just got really present and it kind of just all came in like different therapies that we had been doing over the last, 10 years or whatever. And in a certain combination and pattern, I said, this is what we're going to do. And we did it. And he was good. He did his part, right? He gave me at least a 7 out of 10, I'd say. And I was shocked that in 2 months he got excused from the surgery. Like, I felt like it would help. I didn't think it would help that good. And if we rewind, he was literally probably my worst patient, like chicken and waffles, diabetic, like everything. And he turned that around. So I just said, interesting, good protocol. We'll have to remember that, right? Move on with my life. And then sometime later, another fella comes in. He's more like a dream patient. He's intermittent fasting. He's active. He's like doing his research. He's really trying. It's older too. That guy was like 75 or something. And he was pissed off because despite everything, and of course we all have blind spots, but he had a lot of plaque in his carotids. And he said, I'd really like to get rid of it. And I said, let's try this one that this fella did. And we did the protocol. And since this guy was like uber on top of his health, he loves to go get scans and workups and everything. He cut his plaque in half in 2 months. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, that is a good protocol. And then I thought he would go on vacation, enjoy his retirement. But he said, I want to do it again. And I said, well, it's not going to hurt you. And so when we did it again, it came to find out that he went down to 0 plaque in his carotids. And we didn't believe it. So we called the radiologist and had her tell us that. And then the coolest thing about him is that he's stayed at 0 for years. So that was really cool. And right before this happened with these guys, and this is so embarrassing, but this is what happened, is that I had stressed myself into pre-diabetes. As a naturopath that was working out, I was even hitting the meditations, Anthony. I was checking all the boxes at Whole Foods. I was not a pastitarian, check, check, check. And I wasn't feeling good. I checked my labs and I was pre-diabetic. And if you know me, that was not an ending point for me. That was a light of fire under me. And I did a deep dive. I had to rewind that on myself because that was not acceptable. And then I started looking at my patients and finding even my biohacker clients, they look even hot. They look sexy. They look fit. Their blood sugar and insulin was like riding a roller coaster, or they didn't even know that they were pre-diabetic. And I found that this was a common thread. And obviously the people that come to work with me are often like me, where they're entrepreneurs, they're business people, they're salespeople, so they're on all the time. But it's not just in their work; they've probably been on their entire life, right? And so that raises cortisol and insulin, and then that contributes to the heart stuff. So that's a big cornerstone of this protocol, is like leaning into that and like getting that into balance.
yeah. Because I liked how you shared the two spectrums. So you had the Uber health guy, and then the guy that was sort of, well, I just do health once a year and it's a campaign. And so, like, when I think of that, and both ended up in the same or similar positions, right? They had a build-up of plaque, in different areas of their body, and so it's really interesting because we're told, by many sources that hey, if you eat fast food and lots of fats, takeaways, and things like that, and you don't look after yourself, you're not exercising, and you're going to block up your arteries with diet and not exercise and things like that. But then you've got this
Right.
uber health guy that's doing
Right.
all the right things. Is still so through your research, what is leading to this plaque builder?
So basically, and it's true. Well, like obviously we can't eat like crap, and that's a component of it. And the cool thing is we have a lot of control over that, right? So that's the fun part about that. But what I find is that we got to start at the top because there's been a lot. I mean, unless you guys have been hiding under a rock, we've been focusing on cholesterol. We've got to squish down that number. I find that's a bit of a distraction. Or we're going to focus on that high blood pressure. Let's squish down that number. Okay, well, sometimes we have to because it's dangerous, but like that's, I always say focusing on those things is like having vacation at the truck stop. It's not the destination. It's something along the way that we have to do, but it's not the destination. So if you go up higher, it's going to be insulin. And but what's causing the insulin? Because it comes with glucose, but glucose doesn't always come from feeding our face. So if you go up higher, that can be coming from stress, right? Anybody got stress out there? Probably all of us, right? Or we're just very committed to the denial, right? And grief and emotions, poor sleep. There's so many poor sleepers that I would say at least half the people that come to see me are poor sleepers, and that causes oxidative damage that can damage the arteries too. And then I don't know how it is over there, but we have a huge issue here with the seed oils. So that's in every time we go out to eat, it's full of seed oils or a lot of these processed foods. And that causes a lot of oxidative damage, which can damage the vessels and increase the inflammation too. So it's coming from all ends, you know. So there's the environmental things, and then there's the mental and the emotional. And a lot of this is like even unconscious, right? Like, because like you said, like maybe you've had your foot on the gas for decades, you know, like unconscious survival mode. And that's been pumping up all these hormones, which is why I think we have to be so good these days because you've got that, and then you've got these outside stressors from the environment, toxins in the food, toxins in the air, toxins in your shower water. I don't know. We could stay here all day listing those things, but those are going to come in and raise the body burden and raise the cortisol, the glucose, and then the insulin. And the insulin, we love all these things. We can't be alive without them, but it's always about balance in the body. If you don't have cortisol, you're dead. But most of us have been having too much cortisol for decades, and insulin is a well-meaning hormone, but when it gets high, we get chubby. We store fat in our belly. We all hate that, right? Nobody loves that. And then it also goes to the liver and says, "Hey, why don't we make cholesterol?" So that if we're just focusing on the cholesterol, it just seems so silly when you draw it out. I draw it out on my whiteboard when I do live webinars. I'll invite you next time I do it, but it just seems really silly when you step back and go, "Why are we just focusing on that? That doesn't really make any sense?"
Yeah, no, well, you really pulled the puzzle together as all the many pieces of the puzzle, and certainly that most of our cholesterol production, up to 80% is done by the liver, and if the liver or if the body's demanding the stress hormone cholesterol, then the precursor to that is cholesterol. So it does make sense that you're going to make more cholesterol in order to make the cortisol, so that you can keep stressing out.
Yeah, so we gotta get off that hamster wheel too, right? Because sometimes we don't even realize that we're kinda just unconsciously addicted to these cycles and these habits and these coping mechanisms, and that's a tough one, right? That is a tough one. I just kinda
Well, because
got I mean go ahead.
yeah, because everyone else, it's just like when you were growing up as a kid, all the unhealthy other kids, you stood out when you had a healthy father and was telling you not to eat those sort of things. Well, it's a bit like the hamster wheel, right? Everyone's on the hamster wheel. And if you're not on the hamster wheel, where are you? What are you doing?
Yeah, they call you, eccentric or weird, and you think it's a bad thing until you realize, no, that's probably okay.
So,
So I just
so
decided
yeah.
this week to start putting a new thing in my protocol for that like mental hamster wheel part because it's we tell people to do things, but it's like if you're just going through the motions, it's hard to make these habit changes. So I've just started this week, I'm not even kidding you, putting people on Yahe. And this is going to sound insane, but so just hear me out till the end of the sentence, right? Because Yahe is the dried leaf of the ayahuasca vine in a powder as a capsule. Now, this is not the same as the shaman brew that people drink, in South America, right? Because that's the vine mixed with another plant. But the plant is a master plant, right? And the jaguars in the jungle will go and eat these leaves. Why? If you dig deep, which you might, it makes our perfect balance of melatonin, serotonin, dopamine, and it kind of helps us make new neural connections, right? And it's not psychedelic. So it's almost like a natural, like a microdose, right? Like a legal one. And so it kind of, when people start taking it, we notice that they kind of fall into a more peaceful state of being, and then they can flow through life a little bit easier, and then it's easier to put in these new habits and more positive coping mechanisms.
So you work on that's regenerative sleep first, so that then they've they're, I guess, waking up with more energy to then go about making more habit changes. Because obviously, change requires a lot of thinking, thought, energy, and if you don't have that thinking, you just go default to what you know and back to old practices.
Right, because maybe we like to get dopamine from, like, being, like, on all the time and, like, being like a machine gun. So if we can kinda get all those into, like, a nice balance for us, like a homeostasis for us, I mean, it literally just came to me, like, this week or last week, because I was scratching my head on it, because some people do so well, right? But they're putting a lot of effort in, right? And then as soon as they take the effort off, what happens, right? We slide back into those old coping mechanisms, or even have like a boomerang effect, and then we kind of have to start over. So that's kind of came to me this week, because I got back on it after not being taking that supplement for a year and a half, and I noticed my flow was so much better and creative and positive and productive, and I was like, well, it's really easy to take one capsule a day, and then we can like slide in the other thing.
Fantastic. So let's build up this protocol in terms of what really helps support good metabolic health, good heart health. Obviously, it's all about managing that cortisol and insulin that you mentioned earlier. So, what are the
Yeah.
steps?
Yeah. So people always write me on social media and stuff. There is no magic supplement. There is no magic treatment. There are treatments that are cool, and those might be nice to layer on top once, but we got to do a system of systems, because we're a system of systems, right? So, and then the body just takes care of it, right? Like literally the body does the healing, right? So it doesn't, hopefully this doesn't get overwhelming, but basically the first thing we got to do is just do a check, just do a self inventory, like, what am I eating? How am I feeling? How am I sleeping? Just get objective so we know where we're at. I love holistic lab panel. Most of your conventional docs are not checking anything interesting that will help us, right? Imaging is nice, depends on the client. Some clients don't want any of that radiation. Cool. That's fine. But sometimes we need that fire under us to get us moving, right? And then it's nice to go back and see those improvements. Then we got to detox. We got to detox. Everyone, if you're alive on planet Earth, you need a detox. This isn't 2000, a once a year detox, not cutting it anymore. This is a quarterly thing now. So just commit to that. We have an herbal detox that we've designed, and it just kind of does everything. And it gives the people the wins right away too, because they feel more energy. Oh, they're going to the bathroom. Good. It's not, crazy diarrhea. Just good. Okay, great. Good bowel movements. Less improvements in the blood pressure, improvements in the blood sugar, improvements in energy, right? So then they get the wins, because then you have to do a nutritional detox. Nobody likes that. That's a sad face, not happy about it. So I have them look at the list for a while, have a come to Jesus, put it on the calendar like quitting smoking, and do that. And nobody likes it the first couple days, but then they feel so good that they keep those things out even longer than they need to, right? So we're doing deeper layers of detoxing. After you're done detoxing, then we got to go after the gut. It might sound silly, but the guts are a mess. Everybody. It's nothing personal. We all got it. And so when they're inflamed and leaky, that inflammation leaks out. And that actually, can you believe that gives us high blood pressure and damages our arteries and everything else? It's not just about digestion. So we can't ignore the gut. So these are two of the pieces. The whole time I'm teaching you, my team's teaching you how to check in on your glucose and insulin and just dial that in. Because even if you're not insulin resistant, which you probably are because pretty much everybody is, you just don't know, right? Or pre-diabetic or diabetic. You don't want these ups and downs. We want a steady metabolic base because then we can build on top of that, right? Think of that like as the foundation for your house, right? So if it's like a roller coaster, like yeah, of course we're not going to heal anything, right? So that's key. And this can be taught in weeks, right? I've had people reverse their pre-diabetes in like 3 to 4 weeks. I just saw a guy yesterday. He had had a heart attack in September, and he's such a cute, happy, healthy guy too. But he found out that he was diabetic, 8.5 hemoglobin A1C. Well, we've been working together, I wanna say 2 months, and he's kinda stretched out his treatments because he likes to go golfing and stuff. He's at 6.5. So he's technically pre-diabetic, and having all these wins, and it takes weeks, not months or years, and you can get these changes, and this is someone that never thought about doing these holistic lifestyle changes, so anyone can do this, and if you do it step by step, it's not overwhelming. And the other thing that freaks people out is that calcium score, right? Everyone's calcium score, not everyone, but a lot of these calcium scores are through the roof, right? Like 0 to 10 is normal, and people call us every day and they're at 2,000, 3,000. I'm like, where is all this calcium coming from? Well, all the stuff that can damage that we talked about, that can damage the arteries and that can lead to this calcium, right? So we do a therapy for calcium homeostasis. And this is really cool. So this isn't a calcium supplement. I'm not a real big fan of calcium supplements because they're gunky. They're gunking stuff up, right? We're already all gunked up. We don't need anything to gunk us more up. But this is an anti-orbital ionic calcium. It's a mouthful. We call it AIC for short. But what it does is it kind of goes in and it scoops up rogue calcium where it doesn't belong. Maybe it's in your joint causing like your weird shoulder, right? It can be causing arrhythmias. That's calcium signaling. Pain syndromes can be calcium signaling misfiring, right? Even like intracellularly. So this causes a lot of the diseases of aging. So it scoops up this gunked up calcium throughout the body and get this, puts it back into the bones and teeth. And this is a home therapy. Like this thing is such a blessing. I thought it sounded so boring when I first heard about it, but like the results are incredible. Women over 50, postmenopausal women, like we don't want to thin our bones. You probably want to look into anti-orbital ionic calcium therapy. It is a blessing, but we're looking mostly people to let's get some calcium, maybe out of the vessels and into the bones and teeth. Let's get that arrhythmia under control, and there's multiple things, right? Like what's our caffeine? What's our genetic clearance of like, these excitable hormones? And there's multiple pieces, but this is key. And we just love it. And the people that love it the most is the people that have like arthritis, gout, because they feel their pain go away. You can't really feel your bone density getting better or your calcium score getting better. You have to test those later on, but it's a total blessing. So I definitely recommend check it out. I'll have a fun article I can send you if it's new to you. But I learned about it at a natural cancer seminar I like to go to every 2 years. So I still go, even though that's not my main thing. But what a superhero that thing is. And there's a few more things. We have the heavy lifters, right? So everybody that got these killer results where their calcium score went down or their plaque went down or whatever, we do some holistic IVs, right? But not like 100, not 40. I literally had them in the clinic 5 times. So if we combine all these lifestyle things with the IVs, and the people got to give at least like a 6 out of 10, because I can't do things for you, right? They get these results. And my favorite IV is Ozone with the ultraviolet light. And then I follow it with PlaqueX, specifically PlaqueX, not just phosphatidylcholine, but PlaqueX. And that synergistically with all the lifestyle stuff seems to just kind of anti-age people. Like it's not uncommon for our fellas to say, I feel 20 years younger, and then go and like build a new house at 70 years old, and stuff like this. Because when we take that inflammation away, when all that oxygenated blood can get to all those little spaces, their energy's back, they're back, and they're just in my idea is like, why don't we rejuvenate retirement? Like why like we could change it because it doesn't you're old doesn't mean you have to have like a laundry list of problems and a bucket of pills. It could just mean that like you're wiser,
Just for the listeners, in terms of breaking down that terminology of the IVs that you just shared, could you just sort of just give a bit more description as to
Yeah.
so they have a better understanding?
So ozone might sound strange, right? Because you're thinking, oh, is that thing, up in the atmosphere, like the hole in it's going to kill me and my family? It's not like that. Ozone, when I went on that regenerative medicine kick, I found through one of the mentors that I found, and it's oxygen. But instead of two molecules like the oxygen we breathe, it's three. And that just makes it more active and more healing. And personally, I if I ever sit down to do an IV, which I try to, once or twice a month, it's always ozone because this is just like the slam dunk, like mother load of healing IVs. It's like if you don't want to waste your time, if you like things that are efficient like me, you want to be doing the ozone IV because it's going to hit inflammation, detox, making your energy pathways work better. It's antimicrobial. You got some candida in you, probably, got critters, got a virus, think you're getting a cold, your coworker was sick, maybe hit the ozone. It makes you oxygenate better, right? It's just a total blessing. Total blessing. It's a standalone therapy. I mean, there's a million ways you can do ozone therapy. We always do it with the IV because I feel, and I think many would agree with me, that that's the strongest. And since COVID, we have found that people's blood tends to be a little bit thicker. So we go a little bit harder. Now we never do the ozone by itself anymore. We always do it with the ultraviolet light. So it's extra because that could be a standalone treatment too. So we always do both. So that's extra antimicrobial, extra anti inflammatory, extra oxygenation for all those hard to reach places. And it involves taking your blood. So, if you're a fainter, let your provider know so they have a juice box for you and a pillow. And, and then it all comes back to you with the ozone. You could go to 10 different people. I guarantee you they all do it differently. It's very much the art and the practice of ozone. I really nerded out on it and I got five different mentors and kind of put it together and made it my own. And then the PlaqueX is really cool because it kind of does like it sounds. You're hearing PlaqueX. Oh, yeah, that sounds good. I don't want to be full of plaque, right? But it does so much more than that. So PlaqueX is phosphatidylcholine, but it's a specific like combination. I can't pull the numbers off the top of my head, but phosphatidylcholine is cool because all of our cell walls are made out of phosphatidylcholine. So in essence, this kind of therapy makes every cell in your body work better. Does that sound good? Right.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so, and I've seen it in people, but it's great for the kidney. It's great for the liver. It's great for your brain. It's great for your nervous system. So there's all these other benefits. If you look up the signs of being low in phosphatidylcholine, it just sounds like being an elderly person. It's like you're forgetful, you lose your balance, your muscles are thinning. So you might want to lean into like working it in. There is oral sublingual phosphatidylcholine therapy. You might want to work that in, biannually or something because the opposite of that sounds better.
And the UV, how's the UV administered?
Well, it's so we take the blood, how I do it, right? I take the blood. Then I put it into an IV bag. It's gonna have some saline in there too, and I like to add B vitamins if they're not sensitive to bees because those are great cofactors, right? And as it comes back to my client, there's a UV light machine. It's got lights all the way around, boom, boom. I don't know how many's in there, 6, 8. And the tube's got this little twisty thing in the middle of it. So as the blood and the fluid goes through there, all the lights as many times as possible, and then goes back to the client.
Okay, so it's a external circulatory system
Mhm.
that's picking up B vitamins, a bit of saline, and gets UV light.
On the way
Yeah,
back, and we
okay,
add the
okay,
ozone in
yeah.
there too, right? Because I know some cavalier people will just inject ozone right into your vein, but it's a little bit dangerous. That's why I don't do it. And so we put the ozone in the IV bag with the blood, mix it up, and then it goes back to you. And if you ever do this, this is so cool. Your blood, especially if you're not feeling good, it might come out looking like a dark red wine or even like chocolate. But once we add the ozone to it, we shake it. That's how we did it at my clinic, and that blood will turn bright red like a fire truck, like right in front of your eyes. And you go, okay,
Oxygenated.
that
Yeah,
looks a lot
yeah,
healthier. Cool. Like I'm already feeling
yeah.
better, you know? And
Wow.
and a normal side effect after doing that IV, people always say, oh, my pain's gone. Oh, my energy is so good. Oh, I went home and cleaned out my closet. I thought about doing that for 10 years. Like that's how cool the ozone is.
To me, it's like a regenerative cocktail that you're
Yes.
making.
Yes. So when I decided to go to medical school, it was totally nuts, but that's how I roll, right? Like, because I decided to leave my husband. I had a young kid with autism and I was just going to go to medical school and I had two jobs. I rented my house out like a hotel. Like, I was like, whatever, this is happening. Of course, I was exhausted. So I found the vitamin IVs, which they call the Myers IVs. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of giving me some energy. So I would go every 2 weeks and get the IVs until I found that mentor. Maybe I'll just hit him at Dr. Anyway. He is a doll, genius, protocol creator, great teacher, but he turned me on to the ozone. And I swear that the ozone IV is like doing 10 vitamin IVs. And because I'm a efficient, don't waste my time kind of gal, I'm like, not anymore.
And in terms of the other observation you made in your clinic around thicker blood as a result or post COVID, is that, do you think, the vaccine behind that, or is it the COVID? It's, the virus itself. What's thickened up or is it the stress that people are so stressed?
You know what was kind of cool about COVID is that it woke a lot of people up. Right? So some people might be less stressed, right? Because they're more present. But I think it's all the above. So if you go somewhere around there and find someone that does live blood analysis, it's really curious. If you're not neurotic, don't go if you're neurotic. It might be too much for you. Don't do it. But you'll see that like a lot of the cells might be stuck together instead of like that one little cute red donut guy. It's like, why does it look like a caterpillar, right? Even on really, really healthy people might see that. And then so we've got to do more than ever before, right? More liver cleanses, more detoxes, parasite cleanses, things for the frequency. So I'm wondering if there's like a 5G component in there, because I find that when people do more of these like frequency mat therapies on a regular basis, then it looks better, the blood. But from the live blood cell analysis people, those that did get the jab will have a little bit nuttier live blood cell on that. I don't even know if we're allowed to talk. It's a real like hush hush kind of thing, but it's definitely something to look into. And so I think it's the stress, it's the virus, it's the jab, it's the 5G. But if we stay on top of it, that's why I'm saying like detox is not once a year anymore. Like we have to make this a priority if we want to live well and age well. We have to be on top of it. But yeah, so then I just go harder. That's why I go harder now. So like I have everyone on a double dose of krill oil of what I did previously, just because everyone, we need to keep that nice, flow of all of this, human battery moving. And I check for a lot of more inflammation markers and signs of the blood being thicker than I used to, because then and that's why you might see like a lot of people got really hot for lumbrokinase, nattokinase, serapeptase, depending on how thick their blood are, right? But I don't give that to everyone across the board. I like to kind of check where they're at. And then they might need something in addition to that. But everybody needs what we already went over, like that detox, the gut, the insulin, these layers, because and that alone will disinflame the body and help that blood flow better. The other thing that I add in
Absolutely.
is something to help kind of chelate the metals, just a simple, like efficient home therapy. And that's interesting too, if you haven't done that, because whenever people start, they go to the bathroom, it smells like chemicals, you right? Or like their armpits are like, they're like, man, what's going on here? Like it's really pulling stuff out. You might even get a headache. And this is just these aren't people that run aluminum, machine shops. These are just regular people, right? And so this is something that kind of needs to be worked into our daily or every other day, or at least cycled in, healthcare routine. Is just kind of gently chelating the metals out of the body too. And that helps with everything.
Yeah, it's part of that detoxification, isn't it? And reducing the inflammation and allowing the body to find its steady state and rhythm, and allow that battery energy to flow through the body. Really appreciate this conversation we've had today, Dr. Mel. How can the listeners best connect with you?
Well, I'm on most social media it's Dr. Mel Holistic, HOLISTIC. So I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. And then we do have a website, and on there is a complimentary masterclass if you're interested about how this process works and wins that other people have had. And we usually have a live webinar once or twice a month. So you can register on the website to get linked into that. It's actually going to be Thursday, so just in a couple days here, and that's Dr. as in Doctor Dr. Melanie Melanie Icard ICARD.com. So you go on there and you can check out both of those things.
Fantastic. And to the listeners and viewers, you can just go to the show notes and click directly on Mel's links. Thank you, Dr. Mel. Really appreciate you coming on the show today. And to the listeners, please share it with others that could benefit from hearing Dr. Mel's protocol for improving your metabolic health, improving your heart health, and feeling overall more energetic and a higher zest for life. So thank you so much, Dr. Mel.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare, or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand me&my Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. me&my Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you may to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, me&my Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of me&my Health Up.